we've begun. I think you should get a bit closer to your microphone, though.
All right. I'm here now. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you mentioned that the lecture series you went up to, you said in like 1972.
Early 70s. Anyway.
Early 70s. That you said was one of the best ones you've ever witnessed.
Right. It was actually published as a book called The Possible and Actual.
Huh.
I used to have copies, but I think I gave them away.
Hmm.
But Francois Jacob, I think somebody should do a movie about him.
Sure.
I really do. The French Resistance up to the Nobel Prize. And the operon theory and all that. Working out how does the DNA work?
Yeah.
You got the DNA, but how does it get that information out?
It's really something.
Yeah.
It's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about the man.
Yeah.
Pleading ignorance, but
yeah. No, he got the Nobel Prize with another guy. His name was Francois Jacob, and then the other guy was Jacob Monet, and people would confuse them. Because of the Jacob in both of them sometimes.
Sure. Oh. Jacob and Jacob.
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson.
And the other guy wrote a book called Chance and Necessity,
Mm.
rather than The Possible and the Actual. So it's interesting to read it too.
Yeah, well, sound like quite the pair.
Yeah.
Huh. So you saw those lectures in person?
Yeah. Took students up. I did that many times, actually. The only time I think we were going to go hear E.O. Wilson, weren't we? Over at UPS, and
If I recall.
it was full, and then we had to come back.
Yeah.
Remember that? We couldn't, you stayed. I remember that was you, and you stayed because you figured you could get in there somehow and still get home.
I probably did.
I think that's the last time I might have done it. But it used to go, they had a series of lectures every year,
Yeah.
a couple of them. And I'd try to make it up for every scientist,
Sure.
that I could.
Yeah.
Rip Torn, or what's not Rip Torn? the black hole guy.
Oh, Kip.
Kip something.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
Kip Thorne.
Yeah.
It's interesting having access to all of them and YouTube. I live alone. That's what I do. A lot of those long evenings.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to.
Yeah, but it's such a. You realize on the day-to-day level, this is just your fellow human being.
Yeah.
With some of these scientists.
Right.
Jacob Strauss and.
Yeah.
Talking about black holes and whatnot. Like they have to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
They have moods and whatnot, but just the mental achievement and the world that they inhabit is so profoundly beyond mine.
Yeah.
You realize like there's a strong case to be made for knowledge and wisdom, far beyond the practicalities of like knowing how to manage electricity to improve your material life.
Right.
There's that upper layer well above it of like you inhabit a different universe.
Yeah. And that's what universities should be for, producing knowledge primarily. Whereas places like PLU should be for sharing that knowledge and bringing it to people. Not just the private ones, but also some of the smaller colleges. But unfortunately, what I think has happened is even at places like PLU, the pressure to publish is it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it does almost. There almost seems to be a commercial aspect to it. Like,
and the pressure doesn't come from the administration; it comes from faculty.
Yeah,
that's how I read it, which to me is a tragedy.
It is because to a certain extent, like you watch like the Feynman lectures and whatnot, and you realize like even among physicists, most were not up to his professional physicists, published ones. It's like. Sometimes you need followers.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need people to be like, okay, I'm going to pass on your knowledge, but your understanding is better at it than mine.
Exactly.
So I don't need to publish.
Yeah.
It's not about me.
Yeah. So,
but like I personally, it's funny to think about people who feel comforted by faith. And trying to make the art, religious faith, and trying to convince them very sincerely, like, I'm comforted by my science. Like, you might lose your friend Jesus, but you're going to gain a lot more. I promise. It might hurt at first to say goodbye to that, But on the other end, I, personally, far more emotional comfort and philosophical comfort from learning about this world, my world, this universe.
Yeah. And I think a deeper religious, in quotes, experience.
Yeah.
I mean, let me just tell you an example. I just recently had one.
Sure.
I sort of like that. But maybe I've already told you, but I had seen, the nature series on BBC are just so great, and Nova.
Yeah.
But, I've seen snakes take bats on those series. I've seen crocodiles take bats, this sort of thing. But what they showed on this recent one. Wait a minute.
Oh, got a phone
Yeah,
call.
dear. No, I'll do it when I get home. Okay. Right. Okay, but what I saw was, what they showed was in Borneo,
The hornbills.
the hornbill. And what the male handed it to the female then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wild.
you're saying evolution. What is it when experiences just inspires awe?
Yeah.
Absolute wonder and awe.
Yeah.
And also that we have an inkling of understanding, of how that came about.
Yeah.
What can be more profoundly wonderful than that? I don't know.
I don't know either. A thinker who I really respect is J.R.R. Tolkien
Yeah.
with his series. And I've read a lot of it. I've read it many times. He really captures the melancholy that would come with immortality and that would come with an actual divine order. Because, especially in the Silmarillion, you're confronted with this circumstance where, it's not, you don't believe in religion. The gods are actually there and you're interacting with them, the Valar, and the god himself who created everything is real. Like, it's not a hypothetical. Don't piss him off. You can actually interact with these demigods. But it's a world that can only get worse.
Yeah.
It can never be as good as it was before the fall.
Yeah.
And everything you do, strangely enough, as the future just drags on and you're these immortal elves and you're confronted with a world where you were created by God and God maybe had a plan, the freedom you have to interact with the world and be yourself can strangely only make things worse.
Yeah.
Because it can never be as good as the way God did it the first time.
Yeah.
And so, the Noldor, they build this incredible city living with the gods, and then they leave. And so they try to build Gondolin and Menegroth and these other cities, but it's never quite as good as what they had before.
Yeah.
And then after things get worse again, they try to rebuild again, and they build glorious, beautiful art and architecture, but it's never quite as good as even that second one. Now they're in like third tier.
Yeah.
And then humans come into the picture, and humans can build these glorious cities and have, arts and kind of magic. They sometimes have, contrivances and semi-magical things, but it can never be as good as the elves. So there is a very, he would maybe say, I'm kind of trying to capture like Anglo-Saxon Iron Age melancholy in his work, but it's also, I think, the melancholy of monotheism, where no matter what you try to do, it's never quite as good as the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And I would say science flips that exactly on its head.
Yeah.
Like, there used to be no life on this planet.
Yeah.
And look what unthinking, undesigned evolution did with nothing more than a replicator.
Yeah. And not only science, but the people people try to describe the world as it is, whereas you have the artists and the poets describing the experience of this world.
Yeah.
And they achieve these great things.
Yeah.
So, when you mention Tolkien, and it's been a long time since I read it, but my favorite trilogy like that is called His Dark Materials.
Yeah.
What it's basically, I'd have to read it again, but basically the point is that the church took away our animal nature.
Right.
I mean, that's basically what it's about. I mean, you have all these, and the church is trying
demons,
to, trying to get rid of all these, your totem animal, whatever it would be.
Yeah.
And, the struggle that goes on.
Right.
And stuff like that. But, it's just a wonderful, and I think this was actually written in response to the Fellowship of the Ring.
Really?
I think this guy did it. Whereas you've got Cambridge in it and all these academic institutions going through the walls and through history and bringing things forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one that I would, if I were still teaching, I could teach a Core 2 class. Yeah. Somebody in literature, I say, let's do the Fellowship of the Ring and let's do the Dark Materials.
No, that'd be good. They do. I mean, there is. At the end of his Dark Materials, would it be the subtle knife? No, the amber spyglass.
Amber spyglass.
Yeah, you've got God in a glass cage, being scuttled around, like carried around, and then boof, he just kind of blows away.
Yeah.
Once his protection is, very good, because it is, like I've listened to Luke's Garage, our lectures, and a lot of time, all three of us were raised Christian.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think we take Christianity a bit way too seriously. Oh, yeah. Like we're held hostage by this thing that happened to us in our childhood we have no control over. And, we're not held hostage by other religions at all. You're just like, oh, this is something that happened, but because it's personal.
Yeah.
And like, I think I get the impression that a lot of people, not all, many people who profess to be believing Christians aren't at all.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do.
I think so too.
So even for them, like sometimes I think we're taking our imagined audience or argument, somebody we're arguing against, too seriously.
Yeah.
Because they don't know.
Yeah.
Most American Christians I know do not read the Bible and don't know any scripture.
Yeah.
Hardly.
Yeah. And it's also true that in my childhood, in that church, it was a lot of nice people with potluck dinners and the young minister that came in, and it was first man aside from my father that influenced my life.
Yeah.
I mean, these were all really nice people.
Yeah.
And so
Nothing
there's
wrong
that.
With that.
No, I mean, it's wonderful.
We should have potlucks.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. But I mean, it was so that experience. And, I don't feel bitter about it. I don't think anybody was deliberately trying to deceive me.
No.
It's just that I was able to see through it.
Yeah.
And
because deception requires knowing what the truth is and then hiding it.
Yeah.
It's like that Lawrence of Arabia quote. So, somebody who deceives hides the truth.
Yeah.
Somebody who tells half-truths forgot where they put it.
Yeah.
And that's a good I've got Christianity. I drop it off in the corner every weekend. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you actually think that when you die, you're going to spend literally eternity with God, and that it has anything to do with a holy man in the height of the Roman Empire in a little corner of the world? Do you think those things are in any way related? I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
That's where I think it's at.
Yeah.
Whereas, I don't understand what time is.
Yeah.
I don't know if the past exists or not. You can always corner me on that. Does the past exist the way the world of our sensorium exists? I have no idea how to answer that question. Am I actually on this itty bitty rock in a universe so vast? It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It's not intuitive.
No,
and that's why I believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. I don't have to believe it.
Yeah.
It's too insane to be a human artifice.
Yeah. Oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
And that's not the argument some people have for faith. I believe it because it doesn't make sense. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say, does time exist? I mean, does it have a direction, this sort of thing, and this sort of thing? But I think I would think, as a natural historian, it does have a direction.
One would.
There is a past. I have ancestors, and I mean, if I hadn't been for those ancestors, I wouldn't be here, and et cetera, going back to the first eukaryote and then the prokaryotes that led to that. And I certainly know that gravity exists, but I don't understand that. No. Even gravity.
People, the common culture, not talking about Christianity now, but just, the internet, things like that. We know that black holes exist. And the common people are like, you'll use the term and whatnot. They are so profoundly problematic in physics. People don't understand how problematic they are. Yeah. It's like the fact that we're very reasonably certain that what we describe as a black hole, which is not a physical object, the fact that it exists is a giant problem. It is very problematic that black holes exist. It's just as problematic that the universe is expanding. Into what?
Yeah.
So, it's so cool that we're stuck with this, and nobody knows. Leon Krauss doesn't know. None of these physicists know. They don't know.
No.
And they better claim not even. They better say that. They better make it loud and clear that they don't know.
Well, this is what one of the, I forget who it was Neil Bohr or somebody else that said, if you understand physics, you don't understand it.
If you think you understand physics, yeah.
I mean, it really is true. And then now, recently we know there's ripples, gravity ripples in space-time because of the collision of two black holes.
Right.
I mean, what the hell?
What the fuck are you talking about?
But I mean, they have this
ripples in what?
Yeah, but,
what's the meaning?
Yeah, they say space-time.
Yeah,
I mean, and you're saying to yourself, well, I wish I could understand it, but I'm so grateful for what you say because they don't really understand it either. I mean, you got dark matter, dark energy.
Yeah,
most of the universe we can't see.
Yeah. I had a coworker at my previous job a guy who was able to do simple math and able to be a very good worker and push the buttons properly.
Yeah.
His name was Craig. And he was one of these people who said he believes in God that I don't really know if he does or not, or if he liked being something of a troll. Older than me.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you know what I think dark energy is? Demons. So cool.
Yeah.
Great. What, as if, where in the Bible does it say that?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, in 2 Thessalonians, Paul said dark energy is demons, by the way.
Well, it's always good to remember that this thing, the brain evolved.
Yeah.
It wasn't designed to figure things out.
Yeah.
It was evolved because it worked in certain conditions in certain ways, et cetera, and then it was social conditions. So it is,
it's not.
I mean, just think
it's not there to solve math.
No, and you just think of how limited our senses are.
Yeah.
I mean, all this radiation that we can't see, these things that and of course, this is where math becomes so important because all of a sudden you can start quantifying things and looking at things. So I love science. So I think there is a history. There is a past.
Yeah.
And it
I don't know where it is.
But I mean, and I also think it could have been different.
Yes.
And the contingency played a big role.
Yeah.
And certainly in life, natural selection and contingency.
Yeah.
And that there could be many futures. There's going to be one. And my argument is the better we understand the past and the present, the better we can make a better future. We have a better chance. But when you deny history, I mean, as best as we can understand it, your chances for planning a better future it's not going to happen.
It's nil. Yeah. Another really, really good book is A Distant Mirror by Barbara Tuchman. And it really gets into the medieval mind. Like she does. All you have to do to realize how crazy the Middle Ages were is to just read their own words.
Yeah.
And how they were very good at some things. And then us moderns looking at them go, why were you able to do this and not this other thing? And they were so trapped by the Bible. The Black Death comes along and you have an ostensibly Christian king asking the University of Paris why this happened. And they said, well, it's this big alignment of the planets. Like, How that's not even Christian.
Yeah.
And then the caveat at the end of it is like, but we don't really know. It's probably the wrath of God. Like, then why bother
Yeah.
doing your silly astrological
Yeah.
calculation,
Yeah.
which is good enough to know the position of the planets? They did have telescopes, and they did observe the sky at night.
Yeah.
And then to go, yep, it's Saturn looked sideways at Jupiter, and then Mars gave a little wiggle, and that's why.
Yeah.
Just say it's the wrath of God. Like, do you have faith or not? So, it's a remarkable time, but I would be willing to call it the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
I know you're not supposed to anymore, but for the average person, it's a pretty dismal. And you have all you have is your like guilt and wrestling with this imaginary, vengeful deity over your shoulder.
So how long after that was Gulliver's Travels written?
Oh shit, I don't really know.
I mean, Gulliver's Travels was
like 16 or 1700s, so it's Renaissance. It's
so
post-Renaissance for sure.
But it's pretty early.
But it's post-Americas too, isn't it? Gulliver's.
Well, that's what I'm trying to remember. I was thinking it was even earlier than that.
I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know.
Because here you have this sarcasm and
right,
and all of a sudden coming out making fun of all this.
Right.
And maybe I'm going to have to go read more about that.
But it was...
Of Jonathan Swift. Yeah, no, you're right. That had to be later.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because I mean...
But it was... But, you do... It's... You see that there are... It is safe to say that there's no essences in a worldview. There's no like, oh... this is the Muslim mind, or this is the medieval mind, or this is the Chinese mind. No essence, but there are attributes, I think, that we can talk about. That's fair, and so you could say, well, a crusader in the First Crusade in the year 1099 is part of a culture and a worldview that is very different from a post-Renaissance person from the same place, and that whether cultures have an essence or not, they do exist, and you can talk about them.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, that whole idea of essence is Platonic. I mean, it goes back to the ideal. There are these ideal forms. These variations are just, and it seems to me it's that way. Right. Whereas that's the wrong way to look at it.
Oh, it's exactly
what you have to do is population thinking and say there's variation within this, and there is no essence, and and then you get more insight.
Right. But I just love learning different cultures, and like the Middle Ages being a very, very distant mirror to my own worldview of like, well, I have 5% in common with them roughly.
Yeah.
All built over the substrate of I see basic human behavior. Like, like I used to be a teenager.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'll never have to be one again. But all the, the human interactions and like with a lowercase a and a lowercase e, the eternal archetypes of human behavior. Boy falls in love with girl.
Yeah.
Parent gets frustrated at child. The mother baby bond.
Sure.
That's there everywhere.
There is a human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's not an essence.
No.
And it's dynamic and it varies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that nature would evolve incredibly slowly, completely beyond our control. Like you look at probably the basic emotional states and social, interactions of the group are probably maybe more like 80% shared with a Homo erectus.
Yeah. Probably.
Like people go, oh, do animals have emotions? I'm like, you're an animal. Do you have emotions? Or what the fuck? It's insane to think that there's the hard line, Like,
that somehow humans are so special.
Right.
I mean, we have a soul.
Yeah.
That's our essence, whatever the hell that is.
Right. But to take, above that, though, it's fat, above that layer, that substrate, that core, if you will, not an essence, but of basic human behavior, to see something like a culture or a worldview, like, say, Christendom, the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, appear as if from nowhere, even though it's not from nowhere at all. We know why it happened. The Catholic Church survived, and the secular Roman authority withered away. Where did the Roman mind go? The Roman culture? Part of it stayed on and evolved into something different in what we call the Byzantine Empire, which they call the Roman Empire at the time. And I just finished the Alexiad, learning that worldview, and so you see it almost, it does become kind of organismal.
Yeah.
Not just boundaries of governments, hard lines like that, which are never all that hard. But there's the classical age, a continuity from the Greek polis and the Roman Republic and those Italian city-states all the way roughly until, crisis of the 3rd century. And then you have a medieval mind, and there it is. It rises up, it exists, and then evolves into something else, sometimes very rapidly.
Yeah.
The Byzantine worldview, a Greek flavor on Roman institutions. They spoke Greek. Nobody spoke Latin by the year 1200.
Yeah.
It was a remembered language.
So, to think of somebody else in history that might have been towards the end of the Middle Ages, it was shocked. It was Martin Luther, I assume.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, here's this emphasis.
He'll break it.
Yeah. Here's this emphasis on the individual making decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than the authorities. I mean,
yeah.
And capitalism could easily fall from that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Luther was preceded by Huss. And it was really that's why it's hard for modern American Protestants to understand how insane medieval Catholic Christianity was. One of the Hussite demands was, we want both forms of communion, because only the priest was allowed to drink the wine. It was a spiritual, literal transaction. Like, you could not take communion without the express censure and money that you paid to the Catholic Church. And if you didn't get it, if you didn't get the bread, you went to hell. Mm-hmm. So thanks, guys. So we don't understand. I think modern Protestants are as that is withering away, we don't realize it was not a personal decision. You did not let Jesus into your heart. Jesus was behind locked doors, held by the Pope.
And you had to buy your way in.
Yeah. Yeah, you did, and so, that middle, and so what I think a lot in the common culture, what happens is modern day heavily Protestantized Christianity gets anachronistically reimposed on the medieval Catholic Church. Well, what was so wrong with that? Well, why would they rebel against the church? Because they were sending people to hell who didn't toe the line. Yeah. That's why. Yeah. You actually believed in hell.
Yeah.
The saints could actually be drummed up and sent to act in the world against people.
Yeah.
It was real. Yeah. The wrath of God was a real thing.
Yeah.
And watch out. It was like a magic wand.
Yeah.
The church was actually using it, and people actually believed that was what was going on. It wasn't, I think this is true.
Yeah.
It's like, no, God killed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to see that, and what a Roman of the high Principate, the year 100, a Marcus Aurelius would have looked at that and just been appalled.
Yeah.
And he's technically living in a more ancient time.
Yeah.
He would have said, like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Is this what we made?
Yeah.
You came from us?
Yeah.
I got to stamp out this Christianity.
Yeah.
Bad. If you could pull Marcus Aurelius forward into the year 1000, looking around Gaul and Hispania like, oh my God, this is a disaster.
Yeah.
You people are nuts.
Yeah. Meanwhile, talking about that period of time, then the era of exploration, discovery of China, and the tremendous culture that was there.
Yeah.
That must have had a tremendous influence on European thinking with the coming of I'm thinking of what Voltaire, Candide.
Oh, yeah.
I guess where, he seems to allude to some of this.
Yeah.
And of course the riches of the Mexicans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It certainly influenced the poets.
Oh, yeah. But it's interesting because there was a thread of the solipsism and xenophobia of the Crusades that went straight into colonization. And there is, I would say, there is a continuity, not direct. It's not an institution. This is a cultural thread, a way of thinking that went straight from like the triumph of the Crusades and God is on our side into European colonization and colonialism that I would say has extended even to the modern day.
Oh, sure.
Like there are a lot of Westerners who think that we are the superior civilization to all others and are here to kind of save the world, save humanity from itself. Yeah. I stand by that. There is a direct line.
Oh, I mean, you don't have to convince me.
So the influence of China or India or the Ottomans on Europe, I think it's kind of, I think it can be overstated very easily. It was certainly there, but did it change European thinking?
No. Well, I think I think for some European thinkers,
yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm arguing.
Yes.
The poets and the scientists,
right,
of the so maybe of the time, certainly. But I think your whole idea of this going on, I mean, that is certainly true today. The whole idea that we are the ones that we conquered it.
Right.
It should be ours.
We won.
And because we're superior. I mean, I've actually heard that.
Yeah.
I think it was an ad for buying gold bullion, honestly.
Sure.
On TV, but it was, or it might have been a Republican ad. Here we are in this country. We conquered it. We should be able to do whatever we want. I mean, that's basically counter to now all this more, the heightened awareness of diversity and, how people got screwed over in the past. It's counter to that. It's our right.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is there.
It is.
Don't tell me to apologize.
Mm-mm.
Don't tell me to, I'm not racist.
No.
This isn't a racist system. And I was like, yeah, it is, bro. That's all you have to admit.
Yeah.
But you can't. You can't because
you can't even talk about the history of racism in school without these people objecting. You can't.
And that's what that's it. Like I would, there's a scam called the Iraqi dinar scam where people generally of a certain side of our political split buy up the very low valued Iraqi dinar, hoping that it will eventually be revalued and make them millionaires, because there's all those zeros behind the Iraqi dinar because it's, a very low valued currency relative to the US dollar. So a $5,000 investment in Iraqi dinars buys hundreds of millions of dinars. Well, if it revalues, then you'd have hundreds of millions of dollars, right? I see a direct line from that all the way back to medieval armies would pay their soldiers with the sacking of a city. We invaded Iraq.
Yeah.
It's ours now.
Yeah.
Them buying Iraqi dinars is a way of sacking Iraq. I enlisted in 2003 and I helped invade this country. I risked my life. I put myself in actual danger. I deserve to be rich for it. It's the same logic.
Yeah.
It's the exact same. You invaded a sovereign country and everybody knew it was the wrong thing to do, but you still want the payout. I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
I deserve to be rich.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
And bro, do you think you're a good person?
Yeah.
What makes you so deserving?
Yeah.
They would. Medieval armies, they would, they were so bad at logistics, ridiculously bad, terrible at sieges. So some of these, an invasion of a chevauchée during the 100 Years' War, just these armies would not march. They would more like slough along, very slowly. And they would a lot of times you could almost recruit as you went, because it would pull in all these camp followers and prostitutes and all this other stuff. Well, fuck, the king is going to maybe be able to pay his close, his officers and his inner advisors and whatnot, but half the army is people who kind of showed up.
Yeah.
Well, shit, Calais might fall in a few months. I got to get in there and loot and do some looting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there for the taking.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like it is, I think, like you see the anxieties of the age from the right wing and also from the left of like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What's the future hold for us?
Yeah.
Like with all these environmental problems and racial problems and whatnot. And so some of the rhetoric is like, is this the end of Western civilization? I'm like, well, number one, it never really existed.
Yeah.
I honestly, from what I've understood and read about the Roman world, the medieval world, and the modern world, the big three split, right? And these rather wretched attempts to link like the Minoans to the Greek polis. Somehow from the Greek polis and the democracy, there's a straight line to the Roman Republic, and then there's the Roman Empire, which is freedom and ration when even though it was not free. It was not, the Roman Empire was not a free country. And then you had a little hiccup in the Middle Ages, and then straight to the Renaissance and whatnot. That is not true. That is a false narrative, and and a lot of our culture has a lot more to do with the Middle Ages, because it went pretty much straight from the Middle Ages to colonialism, very quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The same the Northern Crusades, as Europeans pushed into old Prussia and the Baltic states. The rationale of the Catholic Church was, okay, we can't just, they were moderating their influence. We can't just literally exterminate them, especially if we convert them to Christianity. So if they allow missionaries freely into their country and accept baptism, then we won't crusade you. Then I won't call a crusade if you let the missionaries in. And literally, here is a direct continuity. The same exact justification was used in the Americas.
Yeah, sure.
It's
and
like,
of course,
well,
of course, the story you're told. I mean, I told as a youth. I learned. Well, this king got this great revelation from God, and he became a Christian. Well, of course not. What he was doing? Hey, I got to save my ass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. and it broke down completely with the Crusades into the Muslim world for two reasons. Number one, Muslims don't give a fuck about Christian missionizing. They have a strong their worldview, their monotheistic worldview is arguably stronger than Christendom's worldview. Like Muslims do not convert to Christianity, very rarely. Yeah. And secondly, after the pure fucking dumb luck of the First Crusade, which was lucky, it got Jerusalem by the skin of its teeth. The Europeans did not have military supremacy. Yeah. They couldn't do it. You'd like, we put together a really big armada, and now St. Louis the Ninth is a prisoner. But you couldn't do it. Yeah. And so the narrative breaks down there. Yeah. Well, fine. If they're not going to convert, and if we can't defeat them militarily, we'll pretend they don't exist. That's pretty much what happened. Yeah. And there was the Reconquista in Spain and stuff like that. And then there was military supremacy from the Industrial Revolution and whatnot. But Europe had very real reason to be afraid of the Ottomans in the 1500s. Yeah. And Europe could not stop them until they did. The Siege of Vienna. And then they did have far better cannons than the Ottomans.
Yeah, they had the cannons. They also had paper, and they had a better way to propagandize with the alphabet as opposed to what the Ottomans were using. And not having it, I think I told you that I saw the series on the origin of the alphabet and paper and stuff like that. It talked about how you couldn't, with when you started to be able to print Bibles.
Printing press, yeah.
Yeah, it's a printing press and paper cheaply.
Oh, man.
You could then control.
Transformative.
Yeah.
Technology which came from
China, along with the gunpowder
and the paper. Yeah, the Islamic world had paper before Europe. But they didn't have the printing press. Yeah,
but even then, with their written language, it wasn't as easy to convert to a printing press. True. Yeah, that was another reason.
And so, you have I'd say there's more because of the colonial enterprise, which was 600 years, of success and just rampaging around. Like, it was a lot of fun gunning down those natives. We
Yeah.
have the Maxim gun and they have not.
Yeah.
You could see the world
Yeah.
as a soldier in the British Army.
Yeah.
Get paid.
Keep a stiff upper lip.
Whew, you know.
Uh,
And the pride and the self-awareness and also the self-unawareness, you know, the arrogance that came with that of like, well, of course we're superior. Look at our cities.
yeah.
We have electricity and they don't.
Yeah.
Of course we're superior. Look at our steamships.
Yeah.
We have them and the Chinese do not.
Yeah.
We're clearly superior.
Yeah.
Look at our technology. Boy, that does kind of feel good
Yeah.
to a certain type of person
Yeah.
and a certain mental state.
Yeah.
We have got the fancy stuff and they have not.
Yeah.
I would say that I think with internet technology and like now you can walk down other people's city streets without even leaving your room and
Yeah.
seeing what other people are doing.
Yeah.
I hope that's changing in a positive way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But you see, you know, like how scientific is Europe? The European mind. Is
Yeah.
it all that scientific?
Yeah. That's enough for me. My mind's full.
Oh, okay. 41 minutes. All right.
Yeah. No, my mind's full.
Okay.
No, this is amazing. Yeah, it'd be fun. And it would get Luke back because then we could get more questions going. But
True.
I'm exhausted.